Centered.Live, senior living doesn't mean an end to your independence. I know getting old really sucks. Oops, said that word again. But senior living can supercharge your life. It can give you more freedom, more friends, more joy. And today we're busting the myths that keep families stuck in this world of senior living. Now, as usual, Paul Malloy and myself, Randy Burgoyne, host Centered.Live. Centered.Live is a podcast to help you find meaning and value and happiness in this crazy world. And would like to welcome and introduce Amelia Larson. She started as a server in a senior care facility and became a licensed expert in gerontology. Did I say that right?
You nailed it.
Dementia care and placement strategy. Today she helps families find safe, affordable housing options for their loved ones, which is a big thing. So welcome, Amelia. Glad to have you join us. This is our second or third attempt at having three on the screen at once. Yeah,
it's figured out. So far, at least.
Yeah, we're figuring it out.
Been good so far. That's right. And thanks, Amelia, for taking the time to be with us this evening. We really appreciate it. And we're excited. We're eagerly looking forward to the words of wisdom that you will impart for all of us.
Perfect.
Yeah, and for sure, this gets tricky. I've certainly both of my parents have passed on. And so we've been through some interesting challenges with my parents. And then, of course, I'm surrounded by loved ones who are aging.
Yep.
And I will never forget the first time that I visited with a beautiful silver-haired lady that was a neighbor to me in Salt Lake City. And she says, Paul, getting old isn't for wimps. It takes real strength to age.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong.
Not wrong. And I've heard that actually now several times from people who are in their 80s or in their 90s. And yeah, it can be a definite challenge. Yeah. So what we'd like to do tonight, Amelia, is we'd like to position some myths that are common and have you respond to those. And then as you do, then we may ask questions and ask for some clarification. So if you're all right, we're ready to jump into myth number one.
Go for it.
Okay.
So
probably the biggest myth of assisted living is that it means you lose your independence. What do you think?
I think absolutely not. I think if anything, by moving into assisted living, it promotes your independence. And I think if anything, it can take safety risks that people have at home that could then turn into bigger snowballed issues. It can remove some of those little things so that it actually can help you be independent longer. So things like, for example, people that are maybe taking their medications incorrectly, moving into assisted living where someone can just prompt you and make sure that you are taking them can prevent situations where you've been over medicated or under medicated that then lead you into the hospital, which then lead you into skilled nursing, which then may or may not lead you back home. But you could go there. I think the thought with assisted living is people don't know what it is. And so we really help educate people that assisted living can be as little or as much help as you want it to be. And it's very customizable. And so there's just like those little things, even if it's cooking. I mean, the amount of people that have falls because they're dehydrated and they're malnutrition, that then leads them into more negative places in life, that can all be avoided if you just kind of take those little steps ahead of time.
So maybe give us the gamut or the range when you talk about assisted living. And you said it could be a lot of things. If we said from the least amount, what does that look like, to maybe the most amount? And then give us that idea of what's in between.
For sure. So assisted living, think of it as just like a senior apartment building where you have staff there 24 hours a day. Before you move in, the nurse comes and meets with whoever's moving in and builds what they call as a care plan. And so that's what they can customize to help with as much or as little. So the way most assisted livings are structured are you pay for your room, and in the room rent, that's like your meals, your activities, utilities, housekeeping, internet, cable, those type of things. And you can move in and live just like that, where you don't need any other services, but you just need meals, or you just, are done doing your laundry and things like that. And then you can choose to add on a la carte services like medication reminders, shower assistance. And it can go from something super little all the way up to like dementia care, needing help with transferring, toileting, all the above. But it's really great, especially for people that are a couple. And let's say one person of the couple is starting to age a little bit more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important that the caregiver also takes care of themselves. And we see that a lot, where the caregiver starts not taking care of themselves because they're so focused on the person they're taking care of. And then it's just a slippery slope and people go downhill really quickly together. So it can be whatever you need it to be.
So do I understand then that assisted living is not something that can actually transpire in the home?
So in home, there's different options. So like home health would be an option. Home care could be an option. Those are kind of different services. Home health is a really great option. Like, let's say you're a little unsteady, you've just come out from like a surgery or something like that. Insurance will pay for someone to come in like 4 to 6 weeks at a time and help do some physical therapy, help do, some like standby shower assist or things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Home care is a separate program that's typically privately paid for. And that's when they can come in and help you with kind of whatever you need help with. Then you just pay them by the hour. So similar, but different. I think the pros of assisted living is definitely the socialization that comes with it.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing for people remaining independent, is being able to interact with other people versus just sitting at home isolating.
Excellent answer. And I really appreciate that. I have, as my mom, in her final years, it was a mutual decision to keep her at home, but we definitely did the home health care until she went on hospice.
Yep.
But she also wasn't ever alone. And so that was definitely helpful. On the flip side of that, I've had lots of opportunity to go in with different organizations into assisted living facilities and interact with the people living there. And it's always a delight. It's always so much fun. Sometimes it's been Christmas caroling with my family, or with friends, or with a barbershop quartet that I used to participate in. And sometimes it was just, to really socialize and to sit down with these elderly people who have marvelous stories.
Yes.
And if you can get them to share, it's never boring.
Never boring. Never a dull moment, that's for sure. If you want to go like be entertained, just go like pop a squat during lunchtime and it's great.
So what would you say to an aging parent who's terrified of losing control?
Yeah, I think that there's a big stigma with senior living. I think people hear assisted living and their mind goes to what it was 40 years ago, right? I think there's a lot of misconception that like nursing homes and assisted livings are all the same thing, and they're very different. I would encourage people to just go see them, right? And so that's what we really help people do, is we sit down and try to understand, like, what do you need help with? What are your preferences? What is your budget? What is your personality? And then we kind of handpick the right buildings that we think would fit that. I have a funny lady who, she was living at home by herself. Her daughter was like, she's independent, but I want her to go somewhere so down the road, if she needs things, or if she were to have a fall in the middle of the night, someone is there that can quickly respond.
Right.
And this lady was like, absolutely not. You're going to have to drag me in there. I will not be moving to assisted living. Like, I don't even know why we're talking about this. And so I told her, like, hey, like, let's just try to get your daughter off your back. Let's just go look at a couple of places. Let's humor her. And then she will drop this and you can move on with your day. We went and looked at one building that they thought was going to be the perfect fit. And I told them, like, I'm happy for you to go see it, but I don't think that's the right one based off of like what you've shared with me about your mom. But like, let's go see it for the sake of seeing it. They walked in and 30 seconds later, they walked right back out. And then we went to a different community And she fell in love with it so much that she went home that night, listed her house for sale by herself, and moved in the next day.
Oh,
And this was a lady who was never going to
Wow.
go anywhere. And so I think, like, if we can just help people understand that there really is so many options out there that really do match what the person needs, that it doesn't need to be like this prison sentence that you're going to, that the idea is you can find a place where you can keep living. I think people would be very surprised that they've come a long ways from the place that you had your grandma at 20 years ago. So long story, but
well,
yes.
that's interesting. And I can't help but think that this type of service for seniors is exactly what our podcast Centered.Live is all about. We want to have and help people to see what they can do to improve their lives, whether it's having a centered activity that brings them a little more peace, maybe disconnecting from technology. Those are kinds of things that we've talked about, and I think that this fits perfect in some of our past episodes that we've had in Centered.Live. So
it's all about the empowerment, right? Like, connect people to resources. That's like the whole point. Use the resources that are out there to the people.
Right. And myth number 2. So it's not only for people with serious health problems, right? So there's the services for the healthy.
Oh, 100%. And I think back, like, something that we're really trying to do right now is just educate people on like what is out there. Because I get calls all the time of people saying, we need skilled nursing for my dad. And I'm like, tell me about it. What's going on? And they're like, he needs help with showers. I'm like, you do not need to go to skilled nursing to get help with showers. And then contrary, I'll get calls and people will say, oh, my mom needs help with, medication reminders and meals, and that's about it. And I'll say, oh, great. Like, let me put together some assisted living ideas for you. And they'll tell me she can't go to assisted living. She needs way more help than that. Right. And it's like, no, that's exactly what assisted living is. And so I think that's why it is such a great option, because you can come at any stage within that spectrum and be able to get help. And I think that's what's really important for people, is to move somewhere where you can age in place. So you can develop those friendships, you can get to know the staff, you can build that familiarity that really is important, especially if someone has dementia, and you can just have access to the resources. But a lot of the communities, have like independent, assisted, memory care. They're kind of different stages of them. And so you can really kind of graduate according to what you need, all while building a community that you're not having to continue to move away from. I also think there's like a big thing in it, especially if someone that might have more falls, you could either live at home and have, the ambulance coming to your house on a monthly basis and helping get you off the floor, or calling your neighbors all the time.
That's real. That's absolutely real.
I mean, I have a neighbor across the street that happens on the regular. And next thing you know, he's calling me to bail him out of the hospital. And I'm like, we can't keep doing this. Right. And so for him, we've put him on home health so he can continue to work on his stability and just be able to kind of get around better. He had a drop foot from like a foot surgery. The guy's only 67, right? And so he's a perfect person that, assisted living,
young,
what he needs, right? But like, he needs something to keep him out from like this cycle that he keeps falling in. Right. And so there's so many resources out there. And I think if we can break like this mental barrier of thinking I shouldn't ask for help, but instead being like, I should ask for help so I can continue to remain independent.
And I love what you just said about, we ask for help to remain independent.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a worldwide problem as human beings, but I certainly know that as Americans, that there's this idea that we have to remain independent. We don't want to ask for help. And that's all the way from when we're basically, 8, 9, 10 years old. Well, I guess even 3 years old, right? They start to experiment with their independence, and it never goes back, right? We always want to do things our way, on our own, and that doesn't change for the most part, at least mentally, right? Even as we age. And I think that that's a problem, that we forget how important community is. Yeah. And I don't mean just the family. I'm talking about the necessity, the critical importance of friends, and if you're not in a neighborhood where that is something that you have easy access to,
Mhm.
then an assisted living facility where you can create those friendships can mean the difference between night and day in terms of your mental health. And we
Yeah.
forget that.
No. Well, and I think like along that line, I think that's something that really came out during COVID, right? Is like the isolation that people have
Exactly.
about not
Yeah.
having that. But I mean, I've seen a couple of people that I know. There's this one guy, he's fantastic, 92, sharp as can be, but he wears hearing aids, and he
Mhm.
is starting to withdraw from his social circles because he can't keep up in the conversations as well because he can't hear them. And so he's getting self-conscious about saying what, to these younger people he's hanging out with. So instead, he's just removing himself from those situations, and now he's being isolated.
Right.
And, those are the really great things about some of these senior living communities is everyone's in the same place as you, right? Like
Right.
no one is 30 years old walking in there and you're the only 90-year-old. Everyone in there is at that same place. There was a family I had helped one time, and she told me after she moved in, she said, "Do you know how great it feels to sit down at dinner and sit across from someone and say a story about, do you remember when?" And have the person across the table actually know what I'm referencing. Because she's like, I would sit down with my daughter and I would say, "Oh, do you remember this one time?" And she's like, "No, mom, I was not alive during that one time. I don't know what you're talking about." And she said it felt so refreshing to finally have someone that just connected with her and like knew where she was at in life and could relate to the things that she's seen and, mourned and grieved and everything, and now is here. So I think there's huge benefits of being in there from the social standpoint.
So I got a question about the age to start looking at assisted living or senior care. I laughed because when my wife and were first married, and we were looking for an apartment. We were both going to University of Utah, and I wanted to get an apartment that was close there. So
Yeah.
there was this nice looking building, about, I don't know, 8 or 10 stories. I go and walk in. I say, "Hey, I'd like to know if you have something available." And look at me, "Something for your parents?"
Yeah.
No, for me and my wife. "Oh, well, you have to be 55. I'm going, "Why do I have to be 55?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
is that kind of the starting age, is 55?
I would say there's a lot of like 55 plus communities. A lot of those are still more the buy-in model, right? Where you're buying a house or maybe an apartment. I would say most of
Usually with an HOA,
yep,
a homeowners
exactly.
association. Yeah.
Yep. A lot of the other communities, I would say the minimum is 62. I would say the average age of people that are kind of moving into independent livings are probably in their 70s. People moving into assisted livings are probably late 70s, early 80s. But it just kind of depends on what you need. I mean, there's a couple of assisted livings that have people in there that are in their 60s that are still working, that are still doing all these things, but they're like, "I'm sick of dealing with the house. I'm done cooking. I'm done cleaning. Like, I just want to be here and have someone around to like entertain me all day. And then I'm, going to bed." So, I mean, they call them cruise ships on land just because there's
Yes.
so much going on in some of these places that, yeah, like you can't get bored. It's impossible.
Yeah, and just before COVID hit, I was doing some consulting for a assisted living center.
Mhm.
You've probably heard of them here in Utah. But
Yeah.
when I went, the first time I walked into their facility, it was like a cruise ship.
Yeah.
There was activities, there was dining rooms, there was excursions that people were going on. So it literally was a land-based cruise ship. I was just astounded at how luxurious it is. I thought, can I move in now?
I say it all the time. I'm like, I'm going to take that room over there and like, let me know when I can sign the lease, because they're all month to month. So I'm like, at any point you can move out. So you might as well go live it up while you want to, and then figure it out from there.
That's funny.
Yeah. So fun.
Well, I'm glad that as we've been talking about the difference of opportunities or options that are out there. But and I have to smile when you talk about, that some of them are like these land-based cruise ships.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to my mind is, oh, those are going to be expensive. And I think that leads us into the next myth, which is that they're all of these retirement or assisted living facilities are the same. They're overpriced and underwhelming. So
Yep.
again, if we look at that as a myth, what is the reality?
Yeah, I think there's such a big spectrum of options that are out there, right? Like I got a call the other day, and this lady, she called me and she started crying on the phone because she said, my mom is in rehab, my dad has dementia. They cannot go home, but I don't know what we're supposed to do because we cannot afford $40,000 a month for them to go into assisted living. And she just was bawling on the phone and was like, I don't even know why I'm calling you, because like that is not an option for us. And we had this conversation, and we both of the people were very pretty independent and pretty mobile. They just had a big house that they're not able to keep taking care of. We were able to find a community for the two of them for $6,000. And this is a very active community. And this is someone that, had some memory care issues going on as well. So, they definitely didn't pick the most affordable community, but they didn't pick, the most expensive community. But we found a community that was the perfect fit, that was within the budget. And I think, there's so many different types. There's smaller communities that are more, 16 beds or less, that might have less entertainment going on, but are more home-like. Those options can be really reasonably priced. And then you have some middle ground ones that are, like 80 to 100 beds that maybe are kind of middle priced. And it just depends what you need. What I try to tell people is if you move earlier, it's going to be more affordable, because the way most of these places work, again, is you pay for your rent and your room cost, and then you pay for your care separately. And so if you move in while you're more independent, you can save money on that. There's also programs like if you were a veteran, there's a program called Aid in Attendance you can qualify for. There's some programs that if you run out of money, then Medicaid will kick in and start helping pay for things. And I think these are all conversations to be having with your family, right? And your financial planner or whoever's in charge to understand, like, what does this look like? Do we have equity in the house? What plans do we need to be making?
Yeah.
Because in order to qualify for some of these programs, you have look back periods. And so it's important to work with professionals to make sure you're not, shooting yourself in the foot. But I think there's a huge range of things out there. And I think the cost is more affordable. We have a worksheet that we've made that allows people to track their current monthly expenses, right? So their mortgage or their rent, their food, their gas, the utilities, yada, yada, yada. And then the cost for senior living. And they're pretty comparable when you kind of do them apples to apples, because you're not paying for all those other things that you would be paying for if you were at home, because it's all bundled in there.
Interesting. Well, and I'm sure that Social Security income,
Yep.
it gets factored in. I'm sure that, like you said, Medicare would get factored in where it's needed. And then, like you said, very frequently, it's the reversal, if you will, of other assets that then can help pay for these amenities that again are always a choice of the individual or the family.
Yeah. The thing that I think has been really neat to see also is the amount of family support. A lot of times we work with families where it's oftentimes the adult child that we're working with that's noticing that their parent is maybe requiring more help than they are saying
Right.
And the kids are always so supportive to the parents of you guys need to sell your house and use that money to go be taken care of. We don't want your stuff. We would rather have you go live somewhere and be taken care of and enjoy the rest of your life than save the house money for the kids. We would rather have a relationship with you than become the caregiver. So I think that's been really neat to continue to hear, because I think a lot of times the misconception is we should hoard all of our assets and we should not touch any of them, and our kids will take care of us.
Yeah, right.
They can inherit that, right? And I think it's becoming harder for kids to step into that caregiver role, and I think to avoid the resentment.
It can be enormously challenging. That is for sure.
No.
How would you recommend for, say, children of elderly parents or a parent to do an evaluation and maybe even take a tour of the different possible facilities?
Yeah. So what we typically do when we talk to families is look for some of like the beginning red flags. So a lot of times like the little red flags are you see them and they're kind of wearing the same outfit every single time you see them. They used to be really good at cooking, and every time you go to the house, like there's no food in the fridge, and now they're living off of like pizza pockets. Um, like the medication is out, but it doesn't really look taken. So there's a lot of like little things that will start kind of cueing people to maybe start having the conversation. What we do when we work with families is we want to really match you to the right building, because there's a lot of times where families move into the wrong building and then it's not the experience they were looking for, and now it has a negative taste in their mouth. So what we try to do is understand like the full picture, and then we'll set up the tours for these families and help ask the questions and like kind of guide them throughout it. That way, especially for like, the biggest thing that I would say that we work with is finances, right? And so I think it's really important that someone, that their budget is only $4,000 a month is not going in looking at the $6,000 a month community, right? Because to fall in love with something that's not achievable is going to be disappointing.
Right.
And
Thank
vice
you.
versa, right? Like if you are someone with low funding and someone that has a budget goes and looks at that, they might feel disappointed by the lack of options and amenities that are provided. And so we really want to make sure you are in the right category when you are shopping, and that you know what to look for. And so a lot of times we'll set up, lunches so that they can meet other residents or go to a different activity, and just kind of help prompt that. What we recommend also is if there is an adult child that's kind of the one that's like spearheading this, that we set up tours for them to go first, and we narrow it down to like the top 2 communities, and then we bring the parents. That way it's not super.
Oh, yeah. I can see the wisdom in that for sure.
So we're like, them better than anyone. The buildings are going to offer similar amenities, but you're going to be able to say, yeah, this one's exactly like them and that one's not. But that way the parents aren't getting exhausted and blending everything together, and now they're over it. So that's what we kind of do.
So I've got a really, really, really tough question. And I've run across this on a couple occasions where people say, I'm not going to go to assisted living. People go there to die.
Yep. They say that.
How do you respond to that? I mean, people are really afraid of moving to a place that they're going to die. Is that kind of the old mentality, the 40-year-old thing?
I think there is that. And I think like sometimes we have to be like, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but like you're going to die regardless. Like you can't not.
The last place you're going to live, you're going to die.
Yeah. So it's like, whether that's at home or wherever, at some point, like this is going to happen. That's just part of life. And unfortunately, you can't escape it. But I think, there's 2 ways to think of it. You can either sit at home and be isolated and be falling on your own. And, we hear horror stories all the time where someone fell, no one found them for 3 days.
Yep.
They fell in the shower, right? Now their arm is being amputated, and now they can't go to assisted living anymore. They have to go live in skilled nursing, which is like a very different experience. And all their options are taken away. And so I'm like, you can be stubborn and have a really negative experience happen, or you can look at it as an opportunity to remain as independent as you can, have support systems there, keep your family relationship really strong instead of making them the caregiver, and having a really big resource team around you for when the time does come, versus having that unfortunate situation that may or may not happen at home that then takes away a lot of your other options.
Well, this is great. I don't know that we can sum up what you've said. There's so many aspects of it.
Yeah.
So
I dumped a lot on you. Sorry.
but no. This is great. This is a lot more than I anticipated that would be able to cover. So this is just excellent. So
hey, Randy, before you do that wrap up,
Yeah.
I got to ask a question because I know that this is a question that has come up, and that is, what do you do when the parent, the aging parent, says, "Oh, you're just trying to get rid of me. You're trying to slough me off so that you don't have to take care of me, and I can't live at home,"
Yeah.
right? And I know that you answered some of that with what you just shared, but how do you?
That's the barrier.
It is.
A lot of
Not a
times,
myth. It's a real barrier, I think.
a
Yeah.
lot of times we look for someone to make the bad guy, whether that's like a doctor or something like that, because this generation is very big about like, if you're my kid, like I'm your parent, you are my child. I am not going to do what you tell me to do. Like you do what I tell you, right?
Right.
So we have to, but if you're the doctor that's telling me, it's like, oh, like that must be something that I actually need to look into because that's a real fact. So a lot of times, like I end up being the bad guy, where I introduce myself and it's like your doctor wanted me to introduce you and just provide you with options. So if the time comes, what we have found is if we can put the person in the driver's seat where they feel like they're calling the shots, there's usually less resistance to it. And that's why we try to get them
That's
involved.
good psychology.
Yeah, we want you to be in charge of if this time comes, what do you want versus all of a sudden you wake up and now you're here, right? And so we try to include those parents that are really resistant to it so it feels like their plan. And sometimes if we point it out, like, your son can help you shower, or you can have a CNA who that's all they do all the time, help you shower, and then you can just, have clear relationship boundaries. They usually will come around. It usually helps if we talk to them because then it doesn't feel like the kids are pawning off, but it's like, hey, they're here to help you find a solution that isn't this, and we want to keep you safe, which is why we're having this conversation.
Yep, there it is. I think that's the key point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
So-
for answering that question.
Yeah, of course.
Another question that that I came up with while you guys were talking. How do you cover your costs?
Yeah.
How do you make money in your business, and how does that apply to your client?
Definitely. So the way that we get paid is when people move into assisted livings. We have contracts with the different communities and it's built into their marketing budgets. So they pay us when people move in. Best way to think of it is kind of like a brokerage service. But I would say probably like 70 or 80% of the things that we do day to day are truly just free. Like if you need home health, right, or home care, we're constantly just connecting people. My grandpa was paralyzed growing up. My grandma had a stroke. My uncle had cancer. My mom was the caregiver, got stress-induced vertigo, which is where the passion all began to kind of start this, right?
Oh,
And so, yeah, we want to do things for the right reasons. And, we want to give people answers. The amount of calls we get where people are like, I've called 5 people. I don't know why I'm calling you because like no one is giving me a direction. Like we want to just give you a direction. It's a lot to deal with on your own. And I think there is power in communicating that you're in the situation. And I think when we were talking about community earlier, there's big power in that as well, because the amount of families that start their phone calls with us with like, you're never going to believe this. And I'm like, try me, right? It's like every family has the same story with a
Right.
little bit of a different twist. And it's like, if we were talking to our neighbors and people we were, in church with or sports clubs or like things like that, I think we would find that you are not on this island that it feels like you are. And there's a lot more support system and connections that you could come across. So I think, ask for help. There's tons of people out there that are willing to help you out. And I think it's like, it's okay, right? Everyone is going to go through this at some point. I always say it's not if you need it, it's when you need it. So
Absolutely true. So if somebody were trying to get a hold of you and your services, how would they do that? How do they find you?
yeah, so our website, which is thelifeforseniors.com. Look at that. Good job, Randy. That one you can go on. There's a form you can fill out, or our phone number. It's just 801-656-4996. That'll call. And we have a great group of people on our team that are all throughout Utah and some other states as well. So yeah, we're just happy to kind of get you in a direction.
Excellent.
and I'll be sure to have those contact informations in our podcast notes. So
yeah,
that
I'll send you something else for your podcast note. I don't have it on me, but we made a guidebook And people can scan the QR code or just click on it and you just put in your name and your email and it'll send you a PDF copy. But it goes through things of like a checklist of how to know what level of care maybe is needed, tips and tricks of how to start the conversation, different resources besides what assisted living is, and kind of some different things like that. So I'll send you a link to that as well, and then people can get that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Amelia, and of course, Paul. We're glad that you came to join us, and this has been real enriching. It's been just a beautiful episode here. So we appreciate your work, and we encourage the listeners to like and subscribe, and be sure to share, especially Amelia's links, right? and take a look at her hilarious social media posts.
They've come a long way. It's just me and the dog. This is his mic right here, the spoon. So
it's your microphone. Hello.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
All right. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you next time on Centered Live.
Bye.